Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name's Louise Wall and I'm lucky enough to be the Chief Executive of both the Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes Chamber of Commerce. And being a Chief Executive of one of the 53 chambers across the country is such a fantastic job because I get to represent our members and amplify their voices to the highest levels. And Chambers of Commerce represent businesses of all sizes and all sectors. So it really is a wide and varied job. So one day I could be visiting an amazing facility like this one here at Lunaz, or listening to the support needed by a small hospitality business, or even sometimes meeting the leader of the opposition to talk about their plans for potential government. So it's a very wide and varied job. But the Chamber, as the voice of our brilliant business community, have been listening to what the Labour Party have planned. And I can say that there are some things announced by the Shadow Business Secretary that our members have been calling for. Those are replacing the business rate system with a fairer one for all, speeding up the planning system to help get investment flowing and businesses building, and legislating to tackle late payments which hold businesses back. And these are measures exactly what our members have been telling us they're looking for, and I look forward to hearing more about those from our special speaker. And lastly, I want to thank Lunaz for hosting us today in their amazing facility. Any region would be lucky to have a forward-thinking, fast-growing, clean technology business in their patch, and we're so proud to have them here in our area. So on behalf of Lunaz and the Chamber of Commerce, please enjoy the rest of your morning. Thank you.
I was raised to believe in the importance of public service, that contributing to the greater good uplifts both ourselves and our communities. I was also raised not to stay comfortably on the sidelines whilst others do all the hard work. That's why I joined the army, to serve my country to the best of my ability. But during my service, incredibly, even as I deployed to Afghanistan, I saw the military around me being hollowed out under the Conservatives' disastrous and self-defeating policies. And I realised that if they were doing that to our defence, to our national security, that the short-sighted choices that they were making were going to do considerable damage to our economy and our public services, to our schools and to our NHS. I had always followed Labour as the party of and for working people. This is the only party that knows that, yes, we are responsible for building our own lives, but that we do so on the firm foundations of a stable economy and good public services that educate, treat, and protect us. However, in 2019, it had become clear to me that the Labour Party was not always keeping those principles as our guiding light. But I knew that it's not enough to just criticise from the sidelines, and that if you believe in something, you have to roll up your sleeves and get working yourself, because that is what service means. It's certainly not what we have now. A Tory party tearing itself apart over some gimmick policy, wasting millions of pounds that won't even work. A party too busy gossiping about who will be leader this month or next to focus on the one thing that they were elected to do, governing the country. And in the meantime, when I'm speaking to residents on the doorsteps in North East Derbyshire, they're telling me how all this failure is affecting them. In Killamarsh, they've seen their last bus to Sheffield cut. In Clay Cross, the wait for a GP is too long. And in Dronfield, they're worried simply about this month's basic bills. This isn't the country that I want. And I know it's not what North East Derbyshire wants. And I know it's not what Keir Starmer wants. And with Keir, Labour has steered back to the guiding light of our party, that we exist to serve working people. He knows that we're not going to do that through gimmicks, through protests, through slogans. Rather, by rolling up our sleeves, doing the hard work and delivering the national renewal that this country so desperately needs. Through growth based on a strong economy and good public services. It's going to take a lot of hard work to deliver this, a lot. But I know that that's what service means. The leader of the Labour Party knows that's what service means. That's why I am proud to stand for Labour, and I'm proud to introduce Keir Starmer. Keir.
Thank you. Thank you, Louise, for those words, particularly your emphasis on service. I think that's so important for us as the Labour Party. You will be a brilliant candidate for North East Derbyshire, and I hope in time a brilliant Member of Parliament. And thank you to all of you for coming this morning. It is really great to be here in Silverstone, famous across the globe as a symbol of British innovation, ingenuity and speed. And not just in Formula One, also for the electrification of slightly bigger vehicles that you can see behind me. Those trucks here at Lunaz, a world leader in upcycling vehicles for the clean energy transition. Now, world leading. That's not something you could say about British politics in the last few years, is it? Yeah, I'm afraid the circus is back in Westminster again today. And people often say to me, all this is great for you, isn't it? But I have to say, honestly, no. Because it's not just politics, is it? It's the whole country. We're all stuck in their psychodrama, all being dragged down to their level. And that's what they just don't understand. While they're swanning around self-importantly with their factions and their star chambers, fighting like rats in a sack, there's a country out here that isn't being governed. A country that needs leadership. Public services crumbling. High streets stalked by antisocial behaviour. Families weighed down by the burden of higher mortgages. Nurses, teaching assistants, builders, drivers, shop workers, carers, people who never before missed a payment in their life, working harder than ever for the wage in their pocket, who now dread the thought of Christmas shopping, picking up little presents for the stocking, before quietly putting them back. Now, each and every one of these problems would be bad enough for Britain. But when they come together like this, they merge into something bigger and more insidious. A sense that nothing works, that we're going backwards, a country in decline. That's why next year, at the general election, there's something deeper and more visceral at stake than the usual competing arguments. I have no idea what they will say to justify 5 more years of this. But for the Labour Party, our job is to give Britain hope. Not the hope of the easy answer, the miracle cure, or the oven-ready deal. No, that's the road that got us into this mess. It's not the road out. We need a different hope, a realistic hope, a frank hope. A hope that levels with you about the hard road ahead, but that offers you an open hand and a clear destination, a sense of confidence, pride, a security in Britain's future, not just back within our grasp, but a purpose, a mission the whole country can work towards. That's what action must be about. We cannot let the Tories take this country down with them. We cannot let them kick the hope out of our future. It is time to come together, lift the weight off our shoulders, turn the page on this miserable chapter of decline and walk towards a decade of national renewal. A decade of national renewal. Each one of those words is important. Decade, because that's how long it will take. That's not complacent, it's realistic. Of course we can get moving straight away, but I have to be honest about the size of the hole we are in. National, because we will need the contribution of every citizen in this country. For too long, the Tories have written off working people, disregarded their communities as sources of the growth and dynamism we need. They don't understand the pride working people have for their town. And worse still, they never match their ambition. But mark my words, we will. And finally, renewal. Because this can't be done with a few fixes, a policy tweak here and there. No, countries only come together, truly come together, behind ideas, a shared purpose, a national project for a better future. And right now, there's an idea in this country that desperately needs renewal. The idea that this country still works for those who work hard for this country. Now, Britain has been here before. I grew up working class. My dad was a toolmaker, my mum a nurse. And this was the 1970s when, like now, we had our fair share of cost of living crises. I know what this feels like. I know all about the what next anxiety of rising prices, the fear of the postman coming down the path. Will he bring another bill we can't afford? But back then, while day-to-day life may have been tough, there was an idea that always comforted my parents, a faith in Britain, that the future would be a happier place. Britain would be better for your children. Hard work in the end, in the long run, would be rewarded fairly. The question is, do you look around our country now and still believe it? Do you feel with the certainty you deserve that Britain will be better for your children? Because that's what we need to renew. That's the future we need back. The Britain we want to build. And until your family sees a way out, Labour will fight for you. It's why the driving project of my time as Labour leader has always been to restore my party to the service of working people. Cast your mind back to the last election. 4 years ago today, December the 12th, 2019. The worst defeat for Labour since 1935. Working people up and down the country looked at my party, looked at how we'd lost our way, not just under Jeremy Corbyn, but for a while, and they said, no, not this time. You don't listen to us anymore. You're not in our corner. You don't fight for our cause. And they were right, weren't they? We'd taken a leave of absence from our job description, reneged on an old partnership, the Labour bargain, that we serve working people as they drive our country forward. And everything I've done as leader, every fight I've had, has been to reconnect us to that purpose, to make sure we never put working people in that position again, that we say to them, you can choose Labour, and know that we see our country through your eyes. Know that we have changed fundamentally, not just a paint job, a total overhaul, a different Labour Party, driven by your values, relentless in earning your vote. It's a Labour Party that understands the first duty of government is always to protect its people, that every pound of money we collect must be spent wisely because it's yours, and that you can't have good public services without strong public finances, policies always fully funded. A Labour Party that will conserve as well as reform, that understands the careful bond between this generation and the next, that will pass on our institutions, our environment, our obligations to one another in a better shape than we find them. And a Labour Party that has broken new ground in our relationship with business, that gets the value of private enterprise, understands working people want success as well as support, that borders must be secured, economic stability is the foundation for everything, but that in tough times like ours, we must use the power of government carefully but decisively to stoke the fires of the country and get our future back. Service. If there's one word that captures everything I've fought for, it's that. I've made the Labour Party once again a party of service, not protest, focused on credible solutions to your challenges, not empty gestures, not grandstanding political theatre, or the moralising self-indulgence of those who think politics is a sermon about themselves. It's been vital work, the job of my life, but it's crucial for the future of Britain as well, because the way I see it, service is the essence of national renewal, the lifeblood of collective mission, a bond of respect that must exist between politics and people if we're going to change our country. But that's the catch, isn't it? I'm not blind to it. I know exactly how politics looks from here. It's not just that people think politics doesn't do much for them or doesn't understand them. I know it's much, much worse than that. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe in some golden age nostalgia. When I was growing up in a small town on the edge of rural England, politics always felt like something which happened far away. But nonetheless, I do sense something profound has changed now. That political trust isn't just low, it's on the edge, where after the sex scandals, the expenses scandals, the waste scandals, the contracts for friends, even in a crisis like the pandemic, people now think politics is about naked self-enrichment. Not just vanity or self-interest, self-enrichment. That's a common view now. You know, 30 years ago, you might have gone to the pub and a few people would have seen it like that. Now, it's the whole pub. And there's no quick fix. There's no clever trick that will easily restore trust. Policy is part of it. I firmly believe that communities can make better decisions about their future than politicians in Westminster. I believe the hoarding of power in London will always lead to an economy that also hoards potential. And that if we are privileged enough to win the next election, one of the great tasks of the next Labour government will be to take power and control out of our hands and place them in yours. we'll need to clean up politics as well. No more VIP fast lanes, no more kickbacks for colleagues, no more revolving doors between government and the companies they regulate. We will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on cronyism. Seriously, if politicians think they can carry on like this on my watch, they can forget it. They should know by now that's not who I am. I put expense-cheap politicians in jail before. I didn't care if they were Labour or Tory. So I say to Westminster, and I say to you, nobody will be above the law in a Britain that I lead. But ultimately, just like the changes I made to the Labour Party, winning back trust will take a sustained effort, a change in culture from top to bottom, a fight every day to drum the value of service into our politics, the standard you should expect as a bare minimum, the respect you deserve. I won't give up on this. When you come from a working class background, you don't walk around problems. And nor do you listen to self-serving excuses just because they come from people so entitled, so used to wielding power, that they think they're above consequence or justice. No, I've dragged this Labour Party back to service, and I will do exactly the same to politics. And what about the Tories? Because with every step we have taken towards a politics that puts the country first, they have moved in the opposite direction. Now, I used to say that for them it was party first, country second. But that presumes they still care for their party. I mean, seriously, is there anyone in the government now who feels a sense of obligation to anything other than their own self-interest, to democracy, the rule of law, serving our country? I don't even need to answer that, do I? That's how far they've fallen. An entitlement to power totally unchecked by any sense of service or responsibility. That's the cultural stain that runs through the modern Conservative Party. And the Rwanda deal is the perfect example. A policy that they knew would never work. And yet the charade continues. £290 million of taxpayers' money, your money, spent on an exercise, and a failed one at that, in Conservative Party management. And of course, not a single person has been sent. And even if we did send people, we would pay for their hotels and upkeep, and we'd have to resettle refugees from Rwanda in exchange. That's the deal that they are voting on today. To be fair, you do have to credit the Rwandan government. They certainly saw Rishi Sunak coming. But look, I am genuinely grateful for them for one thing. Because according to the Prime Minister, it is only the concern for international law shown by the Rwandan government that stopped him from ripping up Britain's commitment to follow the European Convention on Human Rights. An achievement not just of this nation, but of Winston Churchill and the Conservative Party, that brought peace and protection to the world following our victory over fascism. You know, even now, they have the cheek to call their kind of politics common sense. No, common sense is finding a way to get the job done. Britain is a practical nation. It always has been. Our politics, often led by the Conservative Party, let's be honest, has always reflected that. But these aren't Churchillian Tories anymore. If anything, they behave more and more like Donald Trump. They look at the politics of America and they want to bring it here. It's all woke, woke, woke. Wedge, wedge, wedge. Divide, divide, divide. People can't afford Christmas. If they call an ambulance this winter, they don't know if it will come. 6,000 crimes go unpunished every day. Common sense is rolling your sleeves up and solving these problems practically, not indulging in some kind of political performance art. And this goes for stopping the boats as well. It's not about wave machines or armoured jet skis or schemes like Rwanda you know will never work. It's about doing the basics better, the mundane stuff, the bureaucratic stuff, busting the backlogs, rebuilding a functioning asylum system, removing people more quickly so you don't have to run up hotel bills, and a cross-border police force that can smash the smuggler gangs at source. I've done this before as Director of Public Prosecutions. When we took on the terrorists and the people smugglers, I know it can work, and we can do the same here. Stopping the boats means stopping the gimmicks. And if they can't find a way to do that, if they can't find a way to focus on the job, fix our problems without breaking international law, unlike every government before them, then it's time to stand aside and let the Labour Party do it for them. And that goes for Brexit and legal migration as well. I voted Remain. There's no shame or secret in that. But I know the vote to leave was a vote for change, and change at a much deeper level than our trading relationship with the European Union. It was a vote to say our country's got its priorities wrong, a vote for democratic control, but also for public services you can rely on, opportunities for the next generation, communities you can be proud of, an economy that works for people like you. And this is what the Tories fail to understand about it. Yes, Brexit was a vote for lower immigration. Of course it was. But it was also a vote for that idea that we need to renew, that hard work should be rewarded with a wage people can live on. And for the Tories, that's the rub. 7 years they've had to make Brexit work. But every time they run up against a choice between raising skills and working conditions or issuing more visas, they choose the higher migration option. And it's not an accident. It's who they are. They're not interested in earning your vote. They feel entitled to it. They think economic strength comes from driving down the terms and conditions of the British people. And they won't change. 5 prime ministers. They've all believed it. So if you voted for Brexit 7 years ago, if you voted for the Conservatives 4 years ago, and you're still waiting for the change you demanded, if you believe working people deserve a new foundation of security, with rising home ownership driven by a reformed planning system, a new national wealth fund investing in the jobs of the future, cleaner bills guaranteed by clean British energy, and technical excellence colleges training our kids in the skills we need, if you think work should pay fairly, that practices like zero-hour contracts and fire or rehire should be scrapped, and that we need a solution for sectors like care that isn't just exploiting immigrants on low pay. If, in short, you want lower migration and higher wages, or even if you just want a government committed to economic stability, the rule of law, good public services, restoring Britain's standing, making family life more secure and putting the country first, then I say again, this is what a changed Labour Party will deliver. You won't get it from a Tory 5th term. Only a change of government can bring change to our country. So join us on this mission, because whether you are a Conservative who is thinking of voting Labour for the first time, or a Conservative who has occasionally trusted us before, whether you've always voted Labour or have absolutely no intention of voting Labour, we will serve you. But I also say this, and I mean it, look around your country. We need you. Britain must come together. I believe in this country. I believe in its spirit. I believe in its people, in its businesses, in its communities. But most of all, I believe that if the British people see respect and service in their politics, then they will commit to the national mission of renewal. So if we are privileged enough to win the next election, if we earn your trust, we will set the direction, we will give Britain hope, we'll walk together towards national renewal with a new mission to get Britain building again, take back our streets, switch on great British energy, get the NHS back on its feet and tear down the barriers to opportunity. A Britain where hard work is rewarded, aspiration is backed, communities have more control, politics serves your interests, and where together we can say, in a cry of defiance to those who write our country off, Britain can, Britain must, Britain will get its future back. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you. We're now going to take a number of questions from the media, and let me start, if I may, with Damien from the BBC. Damien.
Sir Keir, yes, Damien Grammaticus from BBC. Your speech has been all about vision and values. We have a debate and a vote today in Parliament about the Rwanda policy. Can I ask you just to give us some real clarity on that, please? Is your opposition to it practical? You were saying in your speech it's not going to work, it's going to be a waste of money. Or is it based on values and your moral vision? This bill will mean that people who come here without authorization, seeking asylum, victims of torture, people fleeing persecution and the like, will in all likelihood be sent to Rwanda and have their claims there. In your vision you are laying out, in the Labour-led Britain you want to lead, should those people be having their claims heard here and given sanctuary in the UK if they're found to have merit?
We will oppose the scheme this evening for a number of reasons. It won't work. It will cost a fortune, £290 million already, without a single person having gone, and it's against our values. That does not mean that we don't recognise the challenge that there is with people crossing in small boats across the Channel. We have to stop that. We have a duty to stop that. But stopping that means not gimmicks, but rolling our sleeves up with a practical plan that will actually work. For me, that's three parts. The first is smashing the gangs, the criminal gangs, that are running this vile trade in the first place. People aren't just arriving at the north coast of France of their own volition. There are criminal gangs that are driving this, and we have to smash them. And as Chief Prosecutor for England and Wales, I've done this before with terrorist gangs, with people smugglers. It can be done. That stops people arriving in the first place, making that dangerous journey. Secondly, we've got to process the claims. It's astonishing that 1% of those who arrived by small boat in the last year or so have actually had their claims processed. 1%. The third thing is that where people's claims fail, we need to return them swiftly to the country they came from. That's mundane, that's practical, that's common sense. That's what will make the difference. The gimmick that is going on in Westminster today isn't going to make the difference. And never forget that when the last legislation was proposed, they said this is the silver bullet, this will make the difference, and then it was cast down as unlawful just a few months ago. So we will not be voting for it this afternoon. Thank you, Damien. I've got Tamara from Sky.
Sir Keir, Tamara Cohen from Sky News. You keep telling us your party has changed fundamentally, had a complete overhaul. But voters might like to know at what point under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership did you realise your party was on the wrong track, and do you regret staying in his shadow cabinet until the bitter end? And may I also ask on illegal migration, you've set out a different approach from the government's. Do you believe that approach will actually stop the boats, or do you think politicians shouldn't make promises of that nature?
Tamara, thanks for being the first in to get two questions out of one. Just on the journey of the Labour Party, look, I think it is important to remember that I didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn to be leader of our party in 2015 or 2016. In fact, of course, I resigned in 2016. I did consider that when, as a country, we were grappling with Brexit, that I had a responsibility to be an effective person on the front bench for my party and for the official opposition, along with others who were on the back benches making the argument as well. This was a huge issue for our country. But we did lose our way. We lost our way into that 2019 election 4 years ago today. And when you lose an election that badly, you don't look at the electorate and say, what on earth were you thinking? You change your party. And evidence of how far we've changed our party is that Jeremy Corbyn won't even stand as a candidate, a Labour candidate, at the next general election. And that's the size of the change we brought about in our party. And that's why I say the Labour Party now is unrecognisable from the Labour Party that was put before the electorate exactly 4 years ago today. On the second question, look, we do all want to stop the boats. I don't want anybody making that journey across the Channel. It's a treacherous journey. It is evidence of the government losing control of our borders. But what I've focused on is what are the practical ways in which you can actually achieve that. Not what's a gimmick that furthers the cause of some within the Conservative Party to have a fight with their own party, because that's what's going on. They're having a fight with themselves, an indulgent vortex that they've got themselves into, half of them with one eye on what's coming next, rather than a practical answer to the solution. As you saw only yesterday, the Permanent Secretary of the Home Office is not really prepared to sign this off as value for money and says there's no evidence of deterrent. So it's built on sand. It isn't going to work. That doesn't mean nothing should be done. What I'm putting before the country is practical ways, based on my own experience of breaking gangs, as to how we actually tackle this issue. Thank you, Tamara. Shihab from ITV.
Shihab Khan here from ITV News. Sir Keir, on Rwanda, would you really throw away £250,000 of taxpayer money that's already been spent to scrap the scheme altogether? And given that we've signed an international treaty here, are you not concerned about the impact that would have on our reputation as a trusted international partner if we start reneging on deals like that? And a second question, if I may. You've mentioned the Tory psychodrama and that we're being dragged down to their level and people are fighting like rats within the Conservative Party. What do you think is the way out of this? And is it time for you to start calling for a general election more aggressively?
The first part of your question is, what are we going to do about the money that's already been wasted? It's already been wasted. It's been spent. This money has been spent. Hundreds of millions of pounds for nothing. That's why I say Rwanda saw the Prime Minister coming. They got £140 million down payment for nothing. That money could have been used to bolster our cross-border force, to do more work to take down the gangs in the first place. And it's been already wasted. And as for trust, two things about that. The Rwanda Treaty doesn't require us to send people to Rwanda. It's an enabling provision. Secondly, there could be no better evidence of a loss of trust in the UK than the threats that have been going on left, right and centre, particularly in recent weeks, to simply break international law in order to get this gimmick across the line. That's where the damage has been done. And anybody speaking to our international partners knows very well our reputation has been tarnished. And I'll take you up on your challenge. Look, there should be a general election, and of course leaders of the opposition will always call for a general election. But people can't afford to go on like this. Whilst they're having an internal party row about this Rwanda scheme, which is all about positioning of their party and the politics of their party for the future. But whilst they're doing that, people are doing their Christmas shopping in a cost of living crisis and are having another year where they can't do what they want at Christmas because they simply can't afford it. 7.7 million people are on NHS waiting lists. It's gone up, waiting for operations. And next year, 2024, as we turn into that new year, 2.3 million people will come off their fixed mortgage payments and be paying hundreds of pounds more for the damage that's been done to the economy. So it's not just the self-indulgence of it, it's the complete lack of governing on the things that are affecting working people up and down the country that is so intolerable in this. Shihab, thank you very much. I'll go to Paul from Channel 4. Paul.
Morning, Sir Keir. Paul McNamara, Channel 4 News. Just the one question.
Which is good.
You've spoken at length about what an issue illegal migration is. At the beginning of the year, you went round the country, you had 5 major pledges. Stopping the boats wasn't one of them. There are a lot of voters who look at you and say, well, this fella isn't really taking the issue seriously, and they'd have a point, wouldn't they?
No, they wouldn't. And I'll tell you for why, because as I made clear in those speeches, the 5 driving missions, the purpose-led government that I intend the next Labour government to be, sits on a foundation of the basics. Securing your borders is the basics. Protecting your country is the basics. And therefore, that's the platform on which these missions stand. And that's why I've set out a practical plan, based on my experience, of how we can actually deal with the challenge that is before us. The driving missions are about the change that we need to bring to our country. The most important of those is about wealth creation, about growth, because we've been flatlining for 13 years. And I think as people go into the ballot box at the next general election, they're entitled to ask themselves, do I feel any better off now than I did 13 years ago when this lot came into government? And I think there will be millions of people up and down the country who say the answer to that question is a firm no. Thank you, Paul. I've got Martina from The Sun. Martina.
Thank you, Sir Keir. Martina Bett from The Sun. Given you have once again said this morning that you would scrap the Rwanda plan, even if it works, and given the fact other European countries, such as Germany, are currently looking at outsourcing asylum applications to third countries, are you against the Rwanda scheme in particular, or could a Labour government ever consider processing asylum seekers in third countries?
Thank you, Martina. Firstly, it isn't going to work. We were told last year that the mere passing of the legislation would be enough for it to work. That's what actually we were told. It really hasn't happened. Also, when I'm asked if it works, I'd like somebody to define what that means. What does that mean? That nobody's crossing? There are no people coming to this country? What does that even mean on the government's own terms? But in direct answer to your question, it's very important, because there are various schemes, as you know, around the world where individuals are processed, usually en route to their country of destination, elsewhere. The Rwanda scheme isn't one of those. This is a straight deportation scheme in relation to people who've already arrived. Other countries around the world do have schemes where they divert people on the way and process them elsewhere. That's a different kind of scheme. And look, I'll look at any scheme that might work. I'm actually pretty clear in my own mind that unless and until we're more serious about smashing the gangs, trying to deal it at the other end of the problem, when people are already here, is looking at it through the wrong wrong end of the telescope. You know, what we've got at the moment is the government that's lost control of the borders, thousands and thousands of people coming here, and they're saying we might just, very expensively, send 100 people to Rwanda. That's what the Court of Appeal said the capacity is. I think that's just looking at it from the wrong end of the telescope. I've got Peter from The Guardian. Peter.
Hi. If I can slightly pin you down to one of the questions that was earlier asked. Do you think a Rwanda-style scheme in which people are not only processed in another country but are sent to another country with no prospect of coming back is not only impractical but a morally wrong thing to do?
But I don't think it'll work. I think it's very expensive and it's the wrong thing to do. It's also looking at the problem at the wrong end, because the question is, how are you going to deal with the trade in people across the world? I would just say one other thing, Peter, because there's been a lot of discussion today about COP28. If we're serious about dealing with this issue, this problem, we've got to recognise that we've got a responsibility to do something about the things that are driving people across borders in the first place. One of the biggest drivers is, and is increasingly going to be, climate change. We have an obligation to ensure that we do everything we can, leading on the world stage, to meet our obligations, not just to save our planet, but to save millions of people from journeys they might not otherwise make. And I was very struck by the absence of the Prime Minister last week at COP28. He breezed in the morning, breezed out a few hours later and was hardly noticed. That isn't the leadership we need on that issue, which is not removed from the discussion that we're having today. Can I have Sophie from the Mirror?
Hi, Sophie Huskisson from the Mirror.
Hi,
so not a single graduate of the Bernie Grant Leadership Programme, Labour's scheme for developing minority ethnic talent, has been selected to stand as an MP. Can I ask you, Sir Keir, how you can ensure you represent the whole country if you fail to have enough diversity in your top ranks? Do you agree that Labour needs to do more on this? And if I can ask a quick question, I know that you won't know the details on this, but we've just had some breaking news that an asylum seeker has died on Bibi Stockholm. I just wondered if we could perhaps get your response, if you can at all, especially around the moral questions on the Tory migration plans.
Yeah, let me deal with both parts of those. Firstly, in relation to representation in the Labour Party, yes, there's always more that we need to do. I want a Labour Party that is diverse, that represents the communities we seek to serve, and there's always more that we need to do. The Bernie Grant scheme is a very, very good scheme. I am pleased that there's really good diversity in the new candidates that we're selecting for the next general election. Obviously, we're not through that yet. But do we want to step up to that challenge? We absolutely do want to step up to that challenge, and that's why we're putting so much effort into the recruitment of the candidates into that general election. On your second point, I'm afraid I just simply haven't seen this breaking news, so I don't know the details of it, but obviously, first and foremost, my heart goes out to the family and friends of an individual who may have or has lost their life. I don't know the circumstances, so I'll try and give a fuller answer when I do. But my human instinct is, of course, to, with the individual who's lost his or her life and the family and friends of that individual who will be absolutely grieving just as we speak. Kamal at the Daily Mail, if I may.
Kamal Jaffer, Daily Mail. You said in your speech that voters had a problem with the journey that your party was taking even before the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. Are you referring to the leadership of one of your current shadow cabinet? And if so, why is he now an integral part of your team?
I was reflecting the fact that we've lost 4 elections in a row. And I think it's a mistake for our party to think that it was simply what happened 4 years ago today that is the sole cause of our problem. I think as a party, this isn't about an individual. Ed Miliband's a very good member of my shadow cabinet on a very important brief leading on the climate issue and energy. But as a party, we drifted too far from the core function of serving working people. We became too interested in debates within the Labour Party and not interested enough in a debate with the country about the challenges that they were facing. So this isn't an attack or comment on a particular individual. It's a reflection of the fact that we've lost 4 elections in a row. And I'm determined that we're not going to lose 5 elections in a row. Thank you very much. I've got Jerry from the Times.
Thank you, Sir Keir. Jerry Scott from the Times. You've spoken about your approach to tackling the migration crisis today in terms of root causes. Now, of course, as you've made clear, that will take time. Rishi Sunak has said that the country has lost patience. Do you think the public will have patience with your plan, and will they have to wait a little bit longer?
Well, let's just reflect on that. I don't accept that it will take time to smash these gangs. If we were dealing with a terrorist gang operating across borders, we wouldn't be sitting here having a discussion saying, well, it'll take a while, do bear with us. We'd be saying, get on with it. And that's what happened. In the operations I was part of as chief prosecutor, we were getting on with it. We weren't saying, oh, this will be a bit of a long shot, let's take our time on this. It was absolutely mission critical for obvious reasons in a terrorist plot. Same with human traffickers. You can't take your time if people are being moved across borders. We need that urgency. That requires a Prime Minister who expends his political capital making that happen rather than managing his own party with the vote that's going to go on later on today. So I don't accept that that the taking time is the problem here. I actually think we can get on with that. Thank you very much. I've got Martin from the Express. Martin.
Thank you, Keir. The home of British Formula One is just over the road there. Excuse the pun, but your party is way ahead in the polls, putting you in pole position for a general election victory.
Boom, boom.
Is the race for number 10 yours to lose, or is this just a lap of honour?
We lost the election 4 years ago today very badly. For us to get from where we landed to a Labour majority government will take a bigger swing than Tony Blair got in 1997. That's a huge challenge. And I am therefore not complacent in the slightest. We have to earn every single vote. We have to earn back the votes we lost. We have to earn the votes that we never got in the first place. And that is a fight every step of the way. And that is why every single week I remind my shadow cabinet, absolutely no complacency. Fight like we're 5 points behind in the polls. And we will continue to fight like we're 5 points behind all the way in to this election. Not for me, not for the shadow cabinet, not for the Labour Party, but for the country. Because that's why we're doing this. Because the country can't afford another 5 years of this. Thank you. And I've got Nick, I think, from the Telegraph. Nick.
Thank you, Sir Keir. If the Rwanda legislation passes, how quickly would you commit to repealing that? And are you saying that whilst you were repealing it, not a single person would be sent to Rwanda under a Labour government? And can I quickly follow up on Shihab's question? If Rishi Sunak loses the vote tonight, should he call an immediate election?
On the repealing, look, the legislation hasn't even got off the ground yet. I mean, it'll go through tonight, I don't doubt. There'll be a lot of shouting and screaming, but in the end, it'll go through. The Prime Minister's got an 80-seat majority. We shouldn't even be having a discussion about whether he's going to get his basic legislation through. Government hasn't lost a second reading vote since 1986, I think it is. This is a government with a majority. So I don't think we should allow them the indulgence of pretending it's going to be tight and he's done a brilliant job to get it over the line. It's got an 80-seat majority. Should get it over the line very, very easily. Then we're into, I don't know how many amendments, etc., etc. So we don't know what the state of the legislation will be. Whether it'll ever effectively come into effect, we saw the fate of the last legislation, and that's why I will focus on a better, more effective way of dealing with the problem. If the Prime Minister loses the vote, then of course he should call a general election. I think there should be a general election as soon as possible. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, which is worse in this country than many other countries. Of course I know we had COVID and there was Ukraine, but this country's been hit harder because of the bad decisions of successive governments and the very weak foundations they've put in place. And sooner we see the back of them, the better, because millions of people can't afford to go on with this government. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you.